¡Felices fiestas! Soy tu amigo el Zorro y te invito a que no bajemos la guardia. Necesitamos que todos hagamos de nuestra parte para mantener bajo control al COVID-19. Haz tu parte y evita reuniones en persona durante esta temporada festiva. Visita sf.gov/holidays at home para más información.
Introducing new Power Bites, a tasty breakfast bite of real sausage, egg, and cheese you can eat anywhere. Like the car wash, the library, shh, sorry, axe throwing, painting the kitchen.
Did we like that blue?
Painting it again. Spotting someone at the gym.
Little help?
Okay, after spotting someone at the gym. New Smithfield Power Bites. Eat what you love wherever you are.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. We're going to hop in the time machine today, and we're going to read an article from July 11th of 2019. And the article is talking about how the Department of Justice had a ton of evidence in regards to the Jeffrey Epstein case, and they sat on it. They didn't go after the co-conspirators. They didn't go after any of the other people involved. They sat on the evidence. And it took an investigation from the Miami Herald to spur them into action. How pathetic, how inept do you have to be if it takes an investigation from a newspaper outlet to spur you into action and to make you do your job? If Berman and Comey and the rest of them at the SDNY are not capable of doing their job correctly, well, perhaps somebody else should do it for them. Because what we have seen thus far from the SDNY, the vaunted SDNY, the historically so great SDNY, we have seen absolutely nothing. No movement. What we saw was Berman get up there in front of everybody and act like he does not even know who Jeffrey Epstein is, begging for people to come forward with information. Bitch, we know that you know who Jeffrey Epstein is. How are you going to get up there and lie to us with your little pointer and your stupid little slideshow? Nobody's buying it, Mr. Berman, okay? And frankly, nobody's holding you responsible ever. Nobody's ever calling you out for a poorly done job. And guess what? I'm here to tell you, you're doing a piss poor job. You work for the people. Remember that, sir. And one day, the people of New York are going to wake up from their trance, and there is going to be hell to pay for all of you corrupt Tammany Hall-ass politicians that reside there. This article is from the Epic Times, and the headline is, Justice Department sat on mountain of Epstein evidence for 10 years. The author, Wilson Miller. At the press conference announcing the indictment of Jeffrey Epstein, a reporter asked U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman if new evidence played any role. Berman gave a hat tip to investigative journalists who followed the case after Epstein was handed a sweetheart plea deal when he was prosecuted for sex crimes more than a decade ago. We were assisted from some excellent investigative journalism, Berman said. Now, while I agree that journalism should play a huge part in cases like this, if the FBI and Berman are relying on journalists to do their job for them, then what in the F are they doing hanging out, taking up space in their offices? You morons should be doing the job. You idiots should be investigating these crimes. But no, you're too busy playing grab ass all the time. Too busy playing politics. Labor Secretary Alexander Acosta, who was involved in Epstein's plea deal as a federal prosecutor, referenced new evidence in a Twitter message the following day. The crimes committed by Epstein are horrific, and I am pleased that New York prosecutors are moving forward with a case based on new evidence, Acosta wrote. Now that new evidence and additional testimony is available, the New York prosecution offers an important opportunity to more fully bring him to justice. Acosta's another one that just makes me sick. Another one of these guys that refuses to stand up and do the right thing. When he was pressured from whoever he was pressured from to make sure Epstein got this sweetheart deal, he should have never bent his back to do it. He should have stood up to whoever was making those requests and brought it to the public, brought it to the inspector general, whatever it is he should have done that. But he should not bend over backwards and help Jeffrey Epstein get out of this jam. Now, of course, you all know how I feel. I don't feel like Acosta was the motivating factor here. There was a lot of people a lot higher than Acosta, all right? Michael Mukasey's office, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of moving parts here when it comes to Acosta with this plea deal. But at the same time, Acosta needs to be held accountable for not having the courage to stand up to these people. How dare you get steamrolled over such an important matter? When you're elected and put into an office such as Attorney General, it comes with a lot of responsibility. And that responsibility is not only to the state. That responsibility is to the people, okay? The people first. And all of these people have lost focus of that. Perhaps in an effort to control the damage, Acosta conducted a press conference at which he repeated his claim that they've brought these charges on new evidence. New evidence and assist from journalists. Don't believe it. And that's a fact. It has nothing to do with that. The SDNY and the prosecutor's office had all of this evidence, all of it. And the only reason that they were spurred into action is because of Julie Brown's investigation. And I'll give her props for that. Without that investigation and her bringing some of this stuff to light, the SDNY would have just continued to sit on it and continue to protect their boy, Jeffrey Epstein. How many of these prosecutors have rubbed elbows with Jeffrey Epstein? How many of these DAs? How many of these judges? The New York prosecutors didn't take action after reading a newspaper article about a game-changing piece of evidence. Compare the 2007 non-prosecution agreement with the new indictment. Both address sex trafficking of children. The Department of Justice has been sitting on mountains of evidence confirming Epstein's abuse of young girls for more than 10 years. Point blank, period. That's a fact. So again, I ask you, how is Bill Barr doing his job if the Department of Justice is sitting on this mountain of evidence? I heard from so many people that Bill Barr was going to come in and be a game changer and he was going to clean things up. It's more of the same, folks, okay? It does not matter what side of the aisle these people are on. Bill Barr is just another retread. He's like Wade Phillips in football, another one of these coaches that keeps getting these jobs in the league, even though they've been in the league for 100 years. Enough already with people like Bill Barr. I am so tired of these retread bureaucrats jumping from administration to administration and wreaking havoc within the justice system. Enough is enough. The assist was instead a wave of public outrage upon the discovery of how the Justice Department and Florida prosecutors protected a child sex offender with a lenient plea deal, hid the details from the victims and the public, and failed to prosecute the women who helped Epstein find, groom, and exploit children. 100%. That's really what it was, right? The Miami Herald's work, that was a vehicle for people to take a ride into Jeffrey Epstein's world. And when they took a little look behind the curtain, well, they were outraged, and therefore the prosecutor's office knew that they had to act. It had nothing to do with new evidence that came about or with new evidence uncovered by the investigation. No. It was the interest that the new investigation drummed up, and then the public pressure that was coming on Berman and friends. You see, that's the only thing that gets these guys moving, folks. Public pressure. When they're at fear of losing their job, or when they're fearful of having to lose some of that power that they have consolidated throughout their despicable lives, well, that's when they're spurred into motion. That's when they act. That's when they come out with their canned-ass statements. What did the Justice Department have on Epstein? The answers can be found in a 2008 lawsuit in which two of Epstein's alleged survivors in Doe v. U.S. sued the United States for violating their rights under the Federal Crimes Victims' Rights Act. In particular, they claim the government violated their right to confer during the negotiation of the non-prosecution agreement and failed to inform the survivors that Epstein's state plea would end the federal case. The survivors also claimed the government violated their right to be treated with fairness by concealing the non-prosecution agreement. 100% that is the case. And we see that the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, when they had the three-person panel, we know how that turned out. Two of the judges, a 90-year-old octogenarian and a Harvard judge, sided with the government, while Judge Hull, a female judge, sided with the survivors. And we know that it's going to go to the full 11th Circuit Court of Appeals at this point because the dissent was so hot and heavy and because of the amicus briefs filed by the three people who co-signed the bill into law. So we know that this is going to go before the whole entire impaneled court, and they are going to hear it as the full 11th Circuit Court. And when that occurs, folks, I guarantee you, unless there is something really, really, really crazy that happens, I can almost guarantee that they're going to rule in the favor of the survivors when the whole entire court is impaneled. Judge Kenneth Mara sided with the survivors on February 21st, ruling that the Justice Department violated the survivors' rights under the Crimes Victims' Rights Act. The opinion set forth the DOJ's conspiracy with Epstein's lawyers to deceive the victims. Some of those who participated in the plea deal at the local level have offered justifications, as the Miami Herald's Julie Brown reported. Assistant U.S. Attorney Marie Villafana in court papers said that prosecutors used their best efforts to comply with the Crime Victims' Rights Act, but exercised their prosecutorial discretion when they chose not to notify the victims. The reasons went like this. The non-prosecution deal had a restitution clause that provided the girls a chance to seek compensation from Epstein. Had the deal fallen through, necessitating a trial, Epstein's lawyers might have used the prior restitution clause to undermine the girls' credibility as witnesses by claiming they had exaggerated Epstein's behavior in hopes of cashing in. Okay, so basically that's just a bunch of bullshit, right? Maria Villafana is definitely one of the bad actors in this whole entire situation that unfolded the first time around. And her reasoning here is just straight garbage. It's just more excuses to try and cover her ass. When in reality, we know that every single right of the survivors was stepped on, chewed up, and spit out by these disgusting excuses for prosecutors in Florida and at the federal level. I am absolutely disgusted by all of them. All of their actions, and every single one of these prosecutors who were involved in the first prosecution, they should all of them should have their law degrees looked at by the bar, and they should all face stiff penalties for what they have done, because this is just ludicrous. These excuses fall flat. The volume of evidence that the DOJ had on Epstein and his criminal enterprise was extensive. For example, privilege logs filed by the prosecutors in the Doe case show they had records covering every part of Epstein's life, including his finances, corporate records, flight logs, and phone calls with conspirators. And they talk like they have no evidence, right? Berman acts like he has nothing. Berman acts like he needs people to come forward and point out Epstein's crimes to him. Bro, you're not fooling anybody, okay? Nobody's buying your narrative, and nobody's going to be gaslit by you people no more. Do your job. Pretty simple. When it came to the survivors, the evidence was overwhelming. The Department of Justice had an FBI file entitled Summary of Sexual Activity, containing an analysis of victim-specific information. This included a chart showing phone calls, travel, and grand jury evidence relevant to possible charges. Records show this involved at least 9 potential victims. The Department of Justice was also in possession of FBI reports of interviews of victims and witnesses in New York back in March of 2008. But no, they didn't have enough evidence to prosecute, folks. They need you to come forward and help them out a little bit more. They needed Julie K. Brown's article to come out so that they could, learn a little something. And this is supposedly the best prosecutorial department in the United States. These are the people that you're relying on to bring down these evil scumbags? Boy, we're setting ourselves up for a big disappointment if the SDNY is our go-to in this case. Court records also revealed the Department of Justice had jury transcripts, witness and victim interviews, investigative files from the state of Florida and the Palm Beach Police Department, and records on potential co-conspirators. Do you see what I'm talking about all the time now, folks? You see what I mean when I tell you that the evidence is there in abundance and not just circumstantial? That's what we might have in the public sphere, right? The things that we put together, those are the breadcrumbs that lead us to the prize at the end. But the government itself, they have dossiers on all of these people. They know intimately what these people were up to, what they were engaging in, who they were involved with. They don't need the help of Julie K. Brown or of Bobby or anybody else. This is the federal government we're talking about here, with every bit of power that you could possibly imagine at their fingertips. The evidence was there. What was missing was the institutional desire to prosecute child sex abuse. Let me read that again for those of you in the back that might not have heard it. The evidence was there. What was missing was the institutional desire to prosecute child sex abuse. The institutions failed the survivors, and the media has failed the public by not demanding those in power answer a simple question: why? And again, folks, that is the sole reason that you hear my fat yap on this podcast on a regular basis. Nobody's asking the hard questions. The legacy media has abandoned the survivors. And yet, if you dig deep enough, you find out that all of the evidence is already there. Everything that is needed to prosecute them is already there. The only thing that is missing is the desire of those in power. The answer to that question lies with the Department of Justice Headquarters, also known as Maine Justice. They knew. Epstein's criminal defense lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, has stated that the plea deal went through numerous levels of approval at Maine Justice. The involvement of Maine Justice was confirmed in the court's February 21st opinion, which states any requirement that Epstein carry out his obligations under the non-prosecution agreement was delayed while he sought higher-level review within the Justice Department. Boy, isn't that nice, huh? And that's what I'm talking about with Michael Mukasey, okay? Remember that name, because I'm going to have a lot more on that coming soon. Because to get to the end, we must start at the beginning. Further corroboration was provided by Acosta in his July 10th press conference, where he stated that people from the Maine Justice were involved early in the development of the Epstein case and were aware of its progression. Acosta declined to state who at Maine Justice was involved in the Epstein case. I have names. Guys ready? Okay? Court records show that post-plea deal decisions went up to the Deputy Attorney General Mark Philippe, who, according to one former Department of Justice official, has a stellar reputation. Philippe was informed of reasons to approve the continued prosecution of Epstein if he didn't comply with the non-prosecution agreement. Judge Mara noted that Philippe reviewed the Epstein matter and determined that the federal prosecution of Epstein was appropriate if he did not comply with the terms and conditions of the agreement. Boy, isn't that nice. The George Bush Justice Department sure was a dumpster fire, wasn't it? Alberto Gonzalez and the rest of them. A whole lot of war criminals letting off child sex offenders. Shouldn't be shocked, but I am completely disgusted. Another high-level Department of Justice official who had his fingerprints on the case is Andrew Oosterbaan, then chief of the Child Exploitation and Obscenity Section. A privilege log filed on June 23, 2015 referenced several emails from 2007 between the Florida federal prosecutors and Oosterbaan regarding an Epstein meeting and changes to the draft indictment and status of plea negotiations. So basically what you had here was the state and federal prosecutors working hand in hand to make sure Jeffrey Epstein got off. I want to see all of those emails, unredacted and for the public to consume. Because I'll tell you right now, the George Bush administration was run by criminals and worse. And anything that those scumbags put their fingers on should be reviewed, and a full review. Because I don't trust anything about the George Bush administration. Not a thing. Additionally, these records appear to show Epstein's attorneys reached out to Andy Laurie in May 2007 to arrange a meeting to discuss the Epstein investigation. Laurie was the acting chief of the Public Integrity Section of the Criminal Division in Washington in 2006, before becoming the acting Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General and Chief of Staff to the Criminal Division by 2007. In 2007, he was also an Assistant U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of Florida. Laurie was kept in the loop on possible federal coercion and enticement charges, proposed changes to the indictment, finalizing details with the state's attorney's office, and final revisions to indictment packages. Folks, remember I told you there were other names that needed to be talked about in this case. Well, here are some of them. And for those of you who are covering this case and doing research in this case, well, there are your breadcrumbs. You now have your homework assignment. Start digging, folks. There are also notations of a 2007 email from Florida federal prosecutors to Maisha Braden, who was serving as a trial attorney for the Child Exploitation and Obscenity section of the Department of Justice Criminal Division, regarding securing a pre-indictment consolation contract. This correspondence took place before Epstein signed the non-prosecution agreement. In other words, Maine Justice was well informed with the investigation and status of the case. And I'll take it a step further. I don't have the evidence proving this as of yet, but I'll say this. Maine Justice was directing the whole entire shebang. Acosta was the fall guy. Acosta was the useful idiot. But this was being run from Maine Justice. This was being run by Mark DeFilippe. This was being run by Mukasey and the rest of them. Okay? The whole entire Bush administration should be imprisoned as war criminals. The involvement of Maine Justice raises the question of who made the ultimate decision on Epstein's sweetheart deal. Was Acosta following orders from Maine Justice? If so, who issued the orders and how high did it go? Who did Philippe and Oosterbaan report to? And why did Maine Justice have such an interest in South Florida child sex offenders? This quote from Acosta, cited in July 9, 2019 Daily Beast article, may provide the answer. I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. Folks, the evidence is all right there in our face. The question is, when is the legacy media going to stop their bullshit and start doing their job? This case has spanned over 4 administrations now, and yet there are no arrests in this case besides the 2 guards. All sorts of money laundering, child sex trafficking, etc., etc., etc. This is not normal, okay? This is not how these cases are normally handled. This is not how even people like Weinstein were treated. And this is why I tell you, you have to read between the lines. If you ever want to pull that shade back and expose what is really going on, you must read between the lines. Trust nothing that they say. Because as this article just pointed out, folks, the evidence is there. The only thing missing is the will to prosecute. If you'd like to contact me, you could do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, everybody, I will be back later on with the Daily Drop. I hope you all have a great day.
Frontier presents Confessions of a Laptop.
Hey, your laptop here. Your slow, unreliable internet is making things a drag, my friend. It's time to get Frontier fiber optic internet. With upload speeds up to 25 times faster than cable. And because it's fiber optics, it's more resistant to bad weather. Frontier 500 meg starts at just $39.99 a month plus tax. See the light. Switch to fiber with Frontier fiber optic internet.
Go to frontier.com/yfiber for complete offer details. Service is subject to availability and all applicable terms and conditions.
We let our guard down, and we need everyone to do their part to get COVID-19 under control. Do your part by avoiding in-person gatherings this holiday season. Visit sf.gov/holidays at home for more.